The first morning sun rose gently over Mountain View, but inside the glass towers of Google's headquarters, the air felt cold and strangely still. The hallway that led to Sundar Pichai's office, normally a quiet hum of shuffling feet and murmured conversations, was now completely silent. It was a Tuesday, not the beginning of the week, not the end. Just an ordinary, middle-of-the-road kind of day. But something about that morning would soon make it unforgettable. Sundar arrived, early as he always did. His shoes made soft clicks against the polished floor. His face, calm as usual, showed no sign of the storm that was about to unfold. He held a small paper cup of tea in one hand, breathing in the scent of ginger and cardamom. There was no reason to think this day would be different from the others. No reason at all until he opened the door. On his desk sat a single white envelope. No label, no stamps. No email pings to hint at what it contained. He paused. Then he saw her handwriting. The moment he recognized it, his hand trembled just a little. Only once in 12 years had she written him something by hand. And that time, it was a birthday card tucked inside a folder after he had forgotten his own birthday. Her name was Diya. And for 12 years, Diya had been his assistant. Not just any assistant. She was the backbone behind the curtain. The calm voice on the stormiest of days, the one person who could read his thoughts before he spoke. If Sundar was the face of Google's quiet power, Diya was the soul. No media ever noticed her, and that suited her just fine. She preferred shadows to spotlights. Now, her desk was empty. Her small cactus plant gone. The mug with a faded "Be kind" printed on the side missing. Sundar sat down slowly, the envelope still untouched. Outside the window, the city stretched as usual, unaware of the growing crack forming beneath one of Silicon Valley's strongest partnerships. He opened the envelope. There were only 3 lines at the top of the letter, and yet they carried more weight than any speech he had given before. I stayed for 12 years. Not because of the job, but because of what I believed in. Today, I no longer believe. I'm sorry. He read the words again, then again. Every time he reached the phrase, I no longer believe, it felt like ice pressing against his chest. Diya wasn't just walking away. She was breaking something sacred, something that had seemed unshakable. The rest of the letter was folded neatly, but he couldn't bring himself to open it yet. His thoughts scattered. What could she have meant? What didn't she believe in? Anymore? Was it the mission of the company? Was it him? A quiet knock pulled him back. It was Rena, the junior associate who always brought the morning reports. She paused at the door, then slowly stepped inside, her eyes drifting to the letter in his hands. Sir, she said, voice low. Diya said she wouldn't be in today. She didn't say why. Just asked me to make sure you got that letter. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Rena hesitated. Is everything all right? He offered a tight smile. Not sure yet. After she left, he finally unfolded the full letter. It was handwritten from top to bottom, a careful, elegant stream of thought. Diya's writing always flowed like quiet rivers, never rushed, always steady. The tone was respectful, warm, but laced with a sorrow that felt raw. In the letter, Diya spoke about the early days, how she had joined just before Sundar became CEO, how she admired his calm nature, his humility, the way he treated every voice in the room as equal. She wrote about nights spent working late, canceling her own plans, to help him make something work. She told him he reminded her of her father, a quiet man who once fixed typewriters in Chennai, who believed character mattered more than credentials. But then her tone shifted. She wrote about the last 3 years, how something had changed, how meetings began to feel less like discussions and more like performances, how people had started saying the right things, not the honest things. How kindness became a weakness in rooms where efficiency ruled. She had stayed, she said, because she hoped things would turn around. Because Sundar, to her, had always been a symbol of decency in an industry that often forgot the human heart. But last week, she wrote something happened that broke her. She didn't say what. Not directly. She only said this. When I saw the way you looked at him and said nothing, I realized something inside you had shifted. You always used to speak up. That silence was the loudest thing in the room. Sundar stared at the line for a long time. He replayed recent moments in his mind. Board meetings, tense video calls, late night strategy talks, and then it hit him. Week ago, he remembered now, a young engineer, Ravi, had presented a feature design. The room was cold. A senior executive official cut him off, harshly, with a tone that felt personal. Others had shifted in their seats, Sundar had noticed. But he had stayed silent, distracted by the bigger agenda. He had let the moment pass. He had told himself it was nothing, but it had been something DIY had noticed into her. That silence had been more painful than any loud mistake. He dropped the letter on the desk and leaned back in his chair, eyes closed. A wave of regret washed over him, not because of the company or the fallout, but because of what he had become too busy to see. For 12 years, Diya had been more than his assistant. She had been his mirror. And now that mirror was cracked, he picked up his phone and typed a message to her. Please talk to me. I didn't realize how much I'd lost until I read your words. He hovered over the send button, then stopped. Maybe she needed time? Maybe reaching out now would only make things worse? He placed the phone down and stared at the desk, at the space where her cactus once stood. It had always been there, small, and green and cheerful. He remembered teasing her once, asking why she kept it around. Because it survives even when the room forgets to water it. She had said, with a wink. Sundar sat in that silence for a long time. The morning moved on. Around him, meetings began. Emails piled up. But all he could hear was the echo of her letter and that single haunting line, I no longer believe. And just as he reached for the letter one last time, ready to read it again, his screen lit up. A calendar alert. Exit interview, Diya, 10:45 a.m. His heart stopped. He hadn't known she scheduled one. And suddenly, everything shifted. She hadn't just left. She was going to say something on record. And if he wasn't ready, the words she left behind wouldn't just shake him. They could shake the entire building. He looked at the clock. 10:17. AM. 20-8 minutes until the room would be silenced again. And this time, it wouldn't be by a letter. It would be by her voice. Asterisk 28-minute test clock ticked softly in the corner of Sundar's office. 28 minutes. It felt like the kind of countdown that didn't end with a siren, but with something quieter and much heavier. The kind of silence that comes after a door closes, and you realize it may never open again. Outside his office, the campus stirred with usual energy, bright minds, code, meetings, all orbiting around a world built on precision and polish. But inside Sundar's mind, nothing felt steady. Every minute between now and 10:45 felt like it carried the weight of 12 years. He stared at the calendar notification again, unable to look away, like it might vanish if he blinked. He wished it was a mistake. Maybe an auto-generated entry. Maybe a misunderstanding. But deep down, he knew Diya never did things by accident. He stood and walked to the window. The sky had shifted, turning pale and overcast. The distant hum of construction echoed faintly from the next block. For the first time in years, Sundar felt unprepared. Not for a presentation, not for a product launch, but for a conversation. And not just any conversation. This would be with the person who had known his every weakness and every blind spot, and never used either against him. Until now, he opened her letter again. The paper had started to curl slightly at the edges. It felt fragile, like it had soaked up something more than ink, something harder to name. Trust, perhaps. Disappointment. He read through the last part again, slower this time. It mentioned how she had stayed silent about many small things, not because they didn't matter, but because she believed the whole was still worth it. She believed in him, and belief, she said, is what carries people through the fog of hard decisions. But now that belief had run dry. Sometimes silence grows like a crack through a wall. She had written, you don't notice it at first. But one day, you realize the wall was never as solid as you thought. By 10:34. Sundar was pacing. He checked his phone. No messages from Diya. He considered texting her again, but stopped himself. If she wanted to speak to him directly, she would have done it already. The fact that she chose to say what she needed to say in an official exit interview told him something more than words ever could. He made a quick decision. He wouldn't sit back and wait. He stepped out of his office and walked briskly down the hallway. Heads turned, surprised by the rare sight of the CEO moving without his usual calm pace. He moved past the elevators and took the stairs down 2 floors. The HR floor was quiet, carpeted, and always smelled faintly of lavender and paper.se. Turn the corner. He saw her .diya sat at the far end of the waiting area, her hair tied back, her posture straight. She wore the same navy blue cardigan she always wore on days she wanted comfort. Her eyes met his, and at that moment, nothing in the world of tech, algorithms, or quarterly earnings mattered. You came? She said, not surprised, not angry, just tired. I had to, he replied, voice soft. I couldn't just wait. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded toward the empty chair beside her. You're not supposed to be in there, she said, gesturing to the outer office door. I'm not here for the interview, he said. I'm here for the truth. She gave a small, sad smile. The truth doesn't always need a meeting. Maybe not, he said, but I need to hear it. From you. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the corner of a file she held. You know, I rehearsed what I'd say. I even wrote it down. But now that you're here, it feels ... different. Then don't rehearse, he said. Just talk to me, the way you used to. She sighed. Not annoyed, just weary. It's not about one thing, she said. People always think departures are about one moment, one decision, but really they're like slow leaks. A little trust here, a little silence there. Eventually you look around and realize you're standing in a place that doesn't feel like home anymore. He listened quietly, not interrupting. Do you remember the retreat 3 years ago? She asked suddenly. In Yosemite? He nodded. Yes, the strategy offsite. You stood up during dinner and told everyone that humility is what keeps the company human. You said success without kindness is just noise. I believed every word. I told myself that's why I stayed. Not for the stock, not for the perks. I stayed because I thought the person leading us still remembered what mattered. And now? He asked Dot. She looked at him directly. Now, I see a room where people talk more about image than intention, where disagreement is seen as threat, where you, of all people, stopped noticing when someone was being dismissed right in front of you. He swallowed hard. I didn't realize, he said. You didn't want to, she replied, and I don't blame you. Sometimes when you're carrying too much, you stop noticing what's slipping through the cracks. They sat in silence. For a moment, behind the frosted glass of the HR office, someone moved. I was going to go in there and just say I needed a change, she said. Keep it simple, polite, the usual story. But then I thought, no, after 12 years, I owe the truth, not just to you, to myself. He looked at her with something close to pain. And what is the truth, Diya? She took a breath. Now I gave everything I had to something that once felt like it saw me. But now I feel invisible. And worse, ... I think you do too. He didn't ask what she meant. He knew. Somewhere along. The way in trying to be everything for everyone, investors, shareholders, press, he had started disappearing from his own values. And she had watched it happen. Silently. Faithfully. Until silence wasn't an option anymore. What will you have me do? He asked finally, not as a CEO, not as a leader. Just as a man who had forgotten how to be seen. It's not about what I want, she said gently. It's about what you're still willing to fight for. The HR door opened. A middle-aged woman stepped out and smiled warmly at Diya. We're ready for you. Diya stood. She looked at Sundar one last time. This doesn't have to be the end, she said. But it has to be honest. He nodded. Will you send me the letter you wrote for the interview? I already did, she said. It's in your inbox. Titled What You Didn't Hear. And With that, she stepped into the room. The door slowly closing behind her. Sundar remained seated, alone in the waiting area, staring at the door. He opened his phone, found the email, and read the subject again. What you didn't hear. He hesitated. Then he tapped. The screen loaded. And the first line of the email made his breath catch. Before I say this to the company, I want to say it to you one last time with the kindness I still carry. His fingers scrolled, eyes widening, but just before he could finish the first paragraph, the screen blinked. A call came in. From VISHAL. The same executive who had silenced Ravi in the meeting last week. The man at the center of Diya's quiet breaking point. And in that moment, Sundar had to choose, answer the call, or finish the letter. Asterisk what you didn't heart call kept ringing. But Sundar didn't move. His thumb hovered over the screen like a tightrope walker, trying to decide which way to fall. Vishal's name pulsed on the display, steady and sharp. Sundar stared at it, heart pounding, not because he feared what Vishal might say, but because he feared what he might say back. He declined the call. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It felt charged like the air before a thunderstorm. He turned back to the email from Diya. For a moment, he just looked at it without reading. The words blurred slightly before they came into focus again. He took a slow breath and began to read. Before I say this to the company, I want to say it to you one last time with the kindness I still carry. Please don't read this as anger. Read it as the sound of someone letting go of something they once believed could never break. The sentence hit him in the chest. Sundar's mind drifted back to the early days when Diya had joined his small team. She had been sharp, quick with ideas, yet quiet in her delivery. But what struck him most back then wasn't her intelligence. It was the way she paid attention. She didn't just listen. She absorbed, and she had absorbed more than he ever realized. The email continued. I've watched this company grow beyond its own skin. Some changes were beautiful. Others left bruises no one wanted to name. I've stayed silent through too many of those bruises. That silence was loyalty, but also fear. I feared that if I spoke, I'd lose the version of this place I loved. Now, I understand if we don't speak, we lose it anyway. Sundar stopped reading again. Her words were not cruel. They were precise, and that precision made them land harder than any emotional outburst ever could. He had built a world where logic and metrics ruled. But Diya had always reminded him that even data has a heartbeat. He stood up slowly and walked back to his office, still holding his phone. As he entered, the quiet returned. The envelope was still on his desk. The window still offered the same indifferent view of the city, and yet something inside the room had shifted. Or perhaps it was something inside him. He read on. You probably don't remember the intern, Nadia. She joined 2 years ago. She sat 3 rows from where I used to sit. She came to me in tears one afternoon. Said her supervisor yelled at her in a team meeting. Said everyone watched and no one said anything. She asked me, is this normal? I told her no, but I didn't do more than that. I didn't escalate. I didn't speak your name. Because by then I wasn't sure if you'd still care. His chest tightened. He remembered Nadia now. A bright face. Always curious, he remembered, thinking she had potential. But she left after 6 months, no warning, no reasons. And no one ever asked why. DIYA single quotes S words continued. I'm not blaming you for every silence. I'm just telling you where they led. When leaders go quiet, the room gets louder with the wrong voices. And eventually people stop listening altogether. A message popped up on his screen. Vishal tried calling. Can we talk before your noon meeting? He didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, he scrolled to the next paragraph. Last week, in that meeting, when Ravi was dismissed, you looked at your laptop. I know why. I know you were thinking about strategy, timelines, how to keep the room from derailing. But for just a second, I wanted you to lift your head. To say something, not for Ravi, for the room, for all of us who were watching. And when you didn't, I felt something inside me collapse. He remembered the exact moment. Ravi's face flushed. Vishal's voice cutting through the air. A tension in the room so sharp you could feel it in your teeth. Sundar had glanced up, met Diya's eyes. She had looked right at him, and he had looked away. He closed the laptop gently and leaned back in his chair. Outside, the sky had grown darker, the overcast now giving way to a soft drizzle. Rain tapped against the glass, like fingers trying to get his attention. He looked at the time. 11:03 a.m., Diya would be finishing her exit interview. By now, he didn't know what she had told them. He didn't know if her words would ripple beyond that quiet HR room. But he knew this. She had given him something no strategy meeting ever could. Truth. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in months. Ravi. It rang once, twice, three times. Then the voice answered. Uncertain. Hello. Asterisk. Ravi. Sundar said. This is Sundar. A long pause followed. Sir. I. This is ... Unexpected. Can we talk? Sundar asked. Not about work. About what happened last week. Ravi was quiet. Then. Slowly. Yes. I think I'd like that. Meet me in the garden area. 15 minutes. He hung up. It was a small step, but maybe it was the kind of step that builds bridges instead of walls. Before he left the office, Sundar opened his laptop one more time. He started a draft email. The subject line read, "To those who watched in silence." He didn't know exactly what he would say yet, but he knew it would begin with something he hadn't said in a long time. I was wrong. Asterisk as he walked out of his office past the empty desk where Diya used to sit. He reached into his pocket and took out a small keychain she had once given him. It was a metal pin shaped like a paperclip. He remembered the story behind it. She had found it during a conference in Singapore, where a speaker had talked about how paperclips were designed not to be flashy or powerful, but useful, flexible, and quietly essential. That's what you need more of in leadership, she had told him. More paperclips, less silver swords. He smiled faintly and slipped it back into his pocket. As he walked toward the garden, the rain continued gently, like a quiet reminder from the sky that sometimes the most powerful things arrive without thunder. He had no script for what came. Next. No data points. No slides. Just the words Diya had left behind. In the silence he finally chose to break. Asterisk. The garden meeting rain had stopped by the time Sundar stepped into the courtyard garden behind the main building. The stones under his shoes were still slick, shining faintly with the residue of water and silence. The garden was quiet, almost unnaturally so. The usual buzz of conversation, footsteps, and rustling papers was gone. Only the soft wind moved, brushing past leaves and tugging gently at the edges of things. He walked slowly, following the curved path toward the far bench. It sat beneath a low-hanging tree with wide branches, and it was there that Ravi waited, standing nervously, his arms crossed, eyes darting toward Sundar and then away again. Sundar saw the tension in his posture, the way his shoulders curled in slightly, like someone expecting another blow. He recognized it not just as anxiety, but as self-protection. It was the look of someone who had once spoken up, been struck down, and now wasn't sure if speaking again was worth the risk. Thank you for coming, Sundar said, stopping in. In front of him, Ravi gave a stiff nod. Of course. I didn't know what this was about. Exactly. Sundar gestured toward the bench. Can we sit? Ravi hesitated, then nodded. They both sat down. The air between them felt thick, not with tension, but with the weight of things left unsaid. For a while, neither spoke. Then Sundar said quietly, I should have spoken up in that meeting when Vishal cut you off. Ravi blinked, surprised. He looked over slowly, unsure of what he had just heard. I saw it happen, Sundar continued. I heard it, and I did nothing. Not because I agreed. Not because I didn't care, but because I was thinking about numbers, projections, strategy. And in doing so, I became someone I never intended to be. Ravi looked down at his hands, his fingers tugging at each other. I thought maybe I had crossed a line. Maybe I'd gone too far with the idea. It was early stage. I just thought it had potential. It did, Sundar said. It still does. Ravi's jaw tightened. Then why did no one say anything? Why did everyone just ... let it happen? Sundar took a breath, steady but deep, because the room was quiet. And when rooms get quiet, power gets loud. They both sat with that sentence for a while. It wasn't just an apology. It was a confession. Diya saw it, Ravi said. Finally, she came to my desk afterward, didn't say much. Just left a post-it that said, "Don't let this moment define your work." I kept that note. I still have it. Sundar felt a sting behind his eyes. Not tears exactly, but the kind of ache that comes when you realize someone else held your integrity together when you failed to hold it yourself. She believed in people, Ravi added. I don't think she ever stopped. No, Sundar sighed quietly. She didn't. She just stopped believing we were listening. A soft breeze passed through the garden, rustling the branches above them. Ravi's expression shifted slightly, some of the guardedness melting away. I appreciate this, he said. But ... Is this going to change anything? Sundar looked up at the sky. I don't know yet. But I know I can't keep pretending nothing needs to. Ravi nodded once, slowly. Will you bring the idea back? Sundar asked. The one from last week? Ravi looked surprised. You mean, present it again? Yes, Sundar said. But not just to me, to the whole team. And I'll be there. Ravi hesitated. What if it happens again? Sundar turned to him. Then it won't be quiet. The words weren't grand. They weren't meant to be. But they carried a weight Sundar had long neglected, the weight of showing up. Not just leading from a title, but from presence. They stood together, not shaking hands, not exchanging promises. Just acknowledging a shift. A new line drawn dot as Ravi walked back toward the building. Sundar remained in the garden. The wind had picked up again. He closed his eyes and let it pass over him, feeling for the first time in a long while that he was shedding something. An armor of silence that had been mistaken for professionalism. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked the screen. Email. From Diya, subject, for the record, opened it immediately. It wasn't long. I wanted to tell you this in person, but I don't think I could have kept it steady in my voice. This is what I told them in the exit interview. This is the truth I carried out with me. The email continued with a calm and devastating clarity. I told them I stayed because of the values I saw in the people around me, especially in you. But I also said values are not permanent. They require choice, attention, courage. When those things are absent, values become slogans. And slogans don't protect people. Sundar felt those words burn. Not from anger, but from recognition. From knowing how often slogans had replaced substance, not out of malice, but neglect. I told. And then it wasn't about one moment. It was the way too many small silences piled up. Too many decisions made without thought to the human cost. Too many people who felt unseen. I told them that unless someone starts listening again, really listening, the company won't lose its position, but it will lose its soul. The final line stopped him cold. You can still lead it. You can still hear them. But you have to want to. And if you ever do, you'll know where to find me. I may have walked out of the building, but not the fight. Sundar read those words again, this time out loud to himself. I may have walked out of the building, but not the fight. He stood up slowly and walked back toward the building, rain soft, shoes pressing quietly against the stone path. He didn't know what would come next. There was no recovery playbook for something like this. No press release. No clean fix. But there was a letter and a voice and the choice to stop being silent out. And so that afternoon, he did something unexpected. He called an all-hands meeting for the next morning. Mandatory. No slides. No agenda. Just one sentence on the calendar invite. We need to talk. Asterisk we need to talk meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. By 8:52, the main auditorium on the Mountain View campus was nearly full. The room, with its sleek wood panels and soft ceiling lights, usually hosted launches, celebrations, Investor updates moments curated to show strength and control. Today, it held none of that polish. There were no banners, no countdown clocks, no music humming softly through the speakers. Just rows of employees waiting, some in confusion, others in quiet anticipation, and a few with a quiet tension in their posture, sensing something real was about to break through Dot in the back row. Junior engineers sat shoulder to shoulder with product leads. Designers whispered to each other. Someone leaned over to ask, "Do you know what this is about?" But no one had answers. The calendar invite had offered only a single sentence. "We need to talk Dot at 9:01. Sundar stepped onto the stage. There was no introduction, no applause, just the quiet shift of bodies turning toward him, eyes raised, breaths held. He wasn't holding a clicker. There was no presentation behind him, only a black screen, and the stillness of a leader who had finally decided to put down his tools and speak with nothing in his hands. He looked out at them, not as an audience, but as people, individuals who had trusted him, followed him, perhaps, questioned him. Individuals who had stayed late, worked hard, stayed silent. Dot, and then he spoke. "Thank you all for coming." His voice was soft, but steady, unhurried, honest. "I don't have a product to launch today. I don't have metrics or charts. I don't even have a plan." A murmur moved through the crowd, small, restrained, unsure. "What I have," he continued, "is something I should have given you a long time ago." He paused, an apology. Now the room was still again. Still in that quiet way where people no longer shift in their seats. Because they sense something human is happening, and they don't want to miss a single word. Asterisk. Someone who mattered. Deeply to this company, left yesterday. Not because she got a better offer, not because she wanted to, but because we failed to protect the values we say we stand for. And when she left, she didn't go quietly. She left a letter. His voice didn't crack, but there was something beneath it. Something raw. That letter showed me parts of myself I didn't want to see. And it showed me the cost of silence. Not just mine, all of ours. He scanned the room, letting the words settle. I sat in meetings where disrespect was allowed to happen in plain sight. I looked away when someone was shut down unfairly. I told myself it wasn't the right time to speak. And each time I chose not to speak, I gave permission for that silence to grow. Somewhere in the fourth row, someone lowered their eyes. In the back, someone leaned forward. I know many of you have watched it happen too. Maybe not the same moment, but moments like it. And maybe, like me, you told yourself it was easier to stay quiet. He let the silence linger. Then he said, simply, "It isn't." A pause. Silence is easy. It's safe. It protects roles and reputations, but it also buries what we say we believe in. And when belief disappears, what's left? Asterisk, someone whispered. Nothing. Just loud enough for the person beside them to hear. The person who left yesterday is named Diya, Sundar said. For 12 years, she supported me, not just as a colleague, as a guide, a reminder. She helped me hold on to the values I came here with, and I lost sight of those values. Not all at once, but slowly, and it happened on my watch. The room was quiet. I'm not here to make a statement. I'm here to ask a question. He paused. When was the last time you spoke up when something felt wrong? Some people looked away. Others held his gaze. When was the last time you saw someone being ignored, dismissed, interrupted, or sidelined and said something? Or did you just ... keep moving? He didn't say it accusingly. It wasn't a scolding. It was a mirror. We built this company on the idea that technology should serve everyone. But if the rooms we work in aren't safe for every voice, then what are we building, really? He stepped forward, closer to the edge of the stage. You don't have to be in leadership to lead. You don't need a title to protect someone. What you need is the courage to say, this doesn't feel right, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. A hand went up near the front. Sundar looked surprised, but nodded. A woman stood, her voice clear. What happens now? He looked at her and nodded once. What happens now is that we stop pretending the culture will fix itself What happens now is that we build structures to protect what matters, not just what performs. What happens now is that I listen more, and I speak when it's hard. He turned slightly, looking toward the back of the room, and what happens now is that we learn to hear the voices we've ignored, starting today. The woman sat down. Others began to murmur again, this time not with doubt, but with cautious hope. This isn't the end of the conversation, Sundar said. It's the beginning. Then he stepped back from the mic, leaving the room in silence once more. But this silence was different. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't afraid. It was listening. After the meeting, people lingered. They formed small clusters in the hall. Some cried quietly. Some hugged. Some looked down at their phones and opened unread messages they'd been avoiding. One intern turned to a senior engineer and said, "I've wanted to say something for months. About how we run sprint reviews. Can we talk?" It was beginning. Later that afternoon, Sundar walked into Diya's old office. It was still empty, still bare except for one thing. A small package had been left on the desk. No note, just a ribbon. He opened it. Slowly. Inside was the cactus. The one she had taken with her. There was a card attached. 3 words. You remembered why? Sundar sat down in the chair she used to sit in. The cactus was placed gently back on the desk. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something return. Not confidence. Not pride. But belief. Asterisk. What remains days that followed the meeting moved like slow waves. Not crashing. Not still. Just steady and deep. For once, the office buzz wasn't about product updates or competitive strategy. It was about that morning. The words that had hung in the air like open windows. The truth that hadn't just been spoken, it had been heard. Sundar moved through the building differently now. Not faster, not louder, just more present. He didn't walk past people the way he used to. He paused, he listened, he asked questions he hadn't thought to ask in. Ears, real ones, not performance-driven ones. And when people answered, he didn't look at his watch. He let the space breathe. Something had shifted. But shifts, he knew, were only beginnings. And beginnings meant nothing if the weight of habit pulled everything back again. 1 week after the meeting, he sat alone in the small, unused conference room on the 3rd floor. It had a single glass wall and a long wooden table. It was the room where Diya had once suggested a new workflow model, only to be talked over by 2 senior engineers. Sundar had defended her idea later in an email. He hadn't said anything. In the moment, not back then. He remembered that silence now. The door creaked open. It was Reena, the junior associate who had first brought him Diya's letter. "Sir," she said, then paused. "Do you have a moment?" He nodded. "Always." She stepped inside, holding a file and a hesitant look. "I've been working on something. I don't know if it's ready, but I think maybe it's important." He gestured for her to sit. "Tell me." "It's not a product," she said. "It's a people initiative, a new framework for team accountability. Not just performance reviews, but communication reviews. How people speak in meetings. Who gets interrupted? Who doesn't get heard? And why?" Sundar leaned forward, his hands folded. Reena continued, her voice steady but shy. "I want to build a tool, not for tracking success, for tracking silence and learning how to notice it." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Diya would have loved that," he said. Reena single quotes. eyes softened. "I know. She helped Emmy once, when I first joined. Told me that kindness isn't the soft option, it's the strong one." They sat in silence for a while, the quiet stretching into something respectful. After Reena left, Sundar opened his email. He hadn't heard. From Diya again, not directly. Her inbox was deactivated. Her contact gone from the directory, but her presence, strangely, felt more alive than ever. He opened a new message. To DIYA.RAJAN, a personal subject. One last thing, wrote slowly, carefully. I don't know if you'll read this. Maybe it goes to a folder you'll ignore. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you should. But I wanted to say thank you, not for the years you gave us, but for the truth you gave me when you left. I don't think you meant to teach a lesson. But you did, not by explaining, but by stepping away. I have been listening since then. Really listening. Not just to the voices in meetings, but to the quiet. The glances. The moments where something good could have been said, but wasn't. I don't expect you to come back. This isn't an invitation. It's just a promise that what you stood for wasn't lost. Not all of it. Some of it is still here. Some of it is being watered now in small ways. And if you ever wonder whether it mattered, whether anything you did actually changed anything, it did. You changed me. He read the message once, twice, then hit send. It was late in the evening now. Most of the building had emptied. The lights outside glowed faintly. A janitor moved past the glass wall, pushing a mop gently down the hallway. As Sundar packed up to leave. He noticed something beneath the cactus on his desk. A folded note he hadn't seen before. Maybe it had fallen earlier. Maybe someone placed it there when he wasn't looking. It was handwritten. No name. No signature. Just 6 words. It's not too late to begin. He read it 3 times. Then he picked it up and placed it inside his coat pocket. The next morning, when he entered the building, something was different again. Not in the code. Not in the strategy. But in the people. Someone held the elevator door longer than they needed to. Someone gave quiet credit to a junior developer during a stand-up. Someone pulled a chair closer to the table for a colleague who always sat just outside the circle. They weren't big moments, but they were the kind of moments Diya would have noticed. He smiled, not because the work was done, but because the silence had finally been broken, and in its place, something new was starting to grow. Something you couldn't measure. Something like belief. Asterisk.